Today we're looking at the technology of World War I. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. Also, don't forget to check out dailybellringer.com where you'll find more resources that go with many of the Bellringer videos. World War I saw death and destruction on a scale never before seen in human history. Many called it the war to end all wars, but the driving force behind this massive destruction and loss of life was the technology of warfare. World War I is considered by many historians to be the world's first mechanized war, in which industrial processes of production were being combined with scientific innovations to create weapons that outpaced the tactics of the soldiers. During World War I, we literally see soldiers on horseback fighting in the same methods of the 1800s, going up against armored tanks, airplanes, and machine guns. The standard traditional methods of open field warfare that had dominated much of human history could simply not be used, yet many commanders still clung to these antiquated tactics. The machine gun had been developed in the 1800s and were used some during the American Civil War. These early machine guns were hand-powered and could fire up to 200 rounds per minute while the operator hand-cranked the gun. But by the time of World War I, machine guns had become fully automated and could fire between 450 to 600 rounds per minute. These guns had a devastating impact, as many commanders, especially on the French and British side, still believed they could defeat their enemy by sheer force. In one attack in 1916, 50% of the attacking British force was either killed or wounded as they attempted to capture German-controlled trenches lined with machine guns. One German soldier noted that you didn't even need to aim the gun to inflict damage. It is estimated that as the war began in 1914, German forces had close to 12,000 machine guns compared to only a few hundred for the Allied forces. Artillery, which is the large caliber guns or cannons used in battle, also advanced to a point where both sides were firing enormous shells at one another with catastrophic damage resulting. Rifled artillery that was breech loading, or in other words, was able to be loaded from the rear of the gun, as well as hydraulic recoil, made artillery able to fire at a faster rate and more accurately. These cannons fired high explosive shells, or in other words, ammunition that would detonate on impact, causing more damage. These cannons could fire long distances and shell enemy positions from miles away. The largest gun used was the German Paris gun that could fire a shell that was over 230 pounds and could hit targets up to 80 miles away. As trench warfare took hold of the war on the Western Front, both sides tried to develop technology that could overcome entrenched forces opposing them. World War I was the first modern war in which grenades were used extensively. Called hand bombs by the soldiers in the field, they were used many times in attacks on entrenched forces as a way to get the enemy to come out from their cover. The war would also be the first conflict in which chemical weapons were used on a large scale. Several different chemical weapons were developed during the war, but mustard gas became the most commonly used weapon. Mustard gas was usually delivered to its target through artillery shells that had glass containers of the liquid form of the gas inside them that would disperse when detonated. The gas was yellowish in color and could cause chemical burns to the skin and blindness if the eyes were exposed. Soldiers on the front drilled and practiced putting on gas masks and covering their skin quickly in case of an attack. The British developed the first tank to be used in combat with the Mark I. The tank was designed and developed in 1915 and saw its first action in combat in 1916. It was purposely designed with wide tracks that could cross over trenches and guns mounted on the side that could fire into the trenches. The Mark I would have several other similar models produced after it, all being slow-moving armored fortresses that could effectively force enemy forces out of their trench. The French also developed the Renault FT, which was a smaller, quick-moving tank that was effective in open field. In addition to these innovations on the battlefield, there was also major advancements in the skies above the battlefield, as World War I was the first major conflict in which airplanes were used in combat. At first, planes were used primarily for reconnaissance or determining the position of the enemy, but as the war continued, planes began to be used for small-scale bombing of enemy trenches, and eventually air-to-air combat developed. Additionally, advancements in naval technology, such as submarine warfare, changed how the war was fought. But I will make further videos focusing on air and naval combat of World War I. The technology used during World War I would have a devastating impact in the loss of life and the number of soldiers wounded during the war, and would change forever how wars would be fought. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.